Hi everyone, my name is Karen Jerzyk and I'm a photographer from Boston, Massachusetts in the United States. If I had to describe my photos, I would say they are very dreamlike in nature, very surreal. My main goal is for people to look at my photos and be able to come up with a story. My photos are really meant to be read almost like a book. I don't want people to look at them and just pass by and not think twice about it. I want the viewer to look at my photos and ask questions. I want them to feel something. They are very emotional, and I use my photos sort of as therapy. I wouldn't consider myself talented. I would consider myself just a normal person who's lucky enough to be able to use a piece of equipment, which is my camera, to really portray emotions, to really let me say things that I have trouble saying face to face to people, or just anything that I can't portray to another person. I have always felt like an outcast. Growing up, I always kept to myself. I was always strange to other kids and I got made fun of a lot. So at an early age, I turned to art, and I really used to love drawing. I used to love sculpting and painting. Anything I could do creatively when I was a kid put me in another world and made me feel better, because I lost myself in creating. As I got older, I started to really get confused about what kind of art I wanted to create. I knew I wanted to be an artist of some sort. I knew I had to do that, but I didn't know how. I think being any kind of an artist, that you kind of need to beat yourself up a little bit, and you have to be a realist, and you really, really have to self-assess. So as I got older, about when I was in high school, I kind of would look around at what everyone else was doing with their art, and I realized that I wasn't really drawing that good. My level wasn't up to the level of some of the other kids that were drawing really well. I didn't really paint well. My sculpting was eh. So I really, really enjoyed doing stop animation, like claymation, making little scenes and making little clay people. And I really liked doing that because visually I felt like something physical. I could really make that into a vision that I wanted to portray. So I think around high school at that time is when I really started getting very influenced by movies. But directors Terry Gilliam, Stanley Kubrick, Tim Burton, Wes Anderson, David Lynch. These are all some of the directors that I just love their movies, where if you pause any of their movies and the pictures on the screen, it actually looks like a beautiful photograph. So I think in high school is when I really figured out that that's the kind of thing I wanted to do. When I went to college, I majored in English. I didn't take any art classes. I did minor in theater, but I think I was very confused in college. I didn't know who I was or really how I wanted to proceed in being an artist. And once I graduated college, my parents had actually given me my first digital camera. Now, this is back in 2003, so it was a 3 megapixel camera, which I know it's so bad, but having a digital camera really opened me up to a whole world of things that I could create that I never thought I could before. So I would just put all these little scenes together. I would do a ton of claymation. I started using Photoshop back then. I was very bad at it. I'm actually admittedly still not that good with Photoshop, but it was kind of neat to me that I could create like all these little worlds, and you know, years before that I couldn't even imagine doing something like that. So yeah, I would say right out of college is when I kind of, you know, started taking up photography as a hobby. Right around then is where I really became interested in going to concerts. I loved seeing bands play live. So I would go to concerts and I would sneak my digital camera in my pants, and I would sit or stand really up close to the stage and I would start taking pictures. And that kind of became my what would become my concert portfolio. So eventually I had enough pictures to have a pretty good music portfolio. So I asked for my first photo pass, I think in 2004, and I loved it. I would get photo passes to shoot right in front of the stage, and I did that from about 2004 to about 2010, 2011. I was photographing probably about 3 to 4 concerts a week. I was traveling everywhere. But they're just, something about it wasn't right. I love doing it, but creatively, when you're shooting bands, there's not much you can do creatively. Everyone's really getting sort of the same shot. So many people are doing it. Mostly everyone's pictures look the same, and I just felt that I still wasn't fulfilling that creative outlet that I had been looking for all these years. In 2009, I believe it was, a fellow photographer said to me, "Hey, why don't you ever do portraits? Why don't you ever photograph models or just photograph normal people? Why do you always shoot bands?" And at first I really didn't like the idea of it. I was like, I mean, I don't know, what am I going to take pictures of? I've never really done that before. So at first I really didn't like the idea of doing portraits, but I gave it a shot and I started doing it. And back then I was taking terrible photos. I wasn't making the connection. I would find models and I really didn't have anything planned out. We would just, go in an alley somewhere or, go out in the woods, and the pictures weren't terrible, but it's a kind of picture where you would look at it and be like, oh, cool, and you would just walk away. And then, I've never really had that much money, and I felt like I needed a studio. But studios are way too expensive for me. I can't afford to buy my own studio. I can't afford to rent my own studio. I can't afford lights. This entire time I've been shooting, I've been using a 5D, which I now have the 5D Mark III. I use a 16 to 35 millimeter lens mostly all the time. And that's about it. I mean, that's really what my entire equipment list entails.